Yesterday, of course, the Supreme Court decided to strike down the Arizona voter registration ID law. 7-2 decision. Scalia writes the majority opinion. Only two justices, Clarence Thomas and you know him, you love him, who shook his head no at Barack Obama, and I'm drawing a total blank in my head, but I know who'll fill us in right here, and that will be Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Hey, Tom, how are you, sir?
Hey, Mr. Walsberg, good to be with you again.
How are you, sir? Okay, so who was the second justice that said no?
Justice Alito.
Thank you, Samuel Alito. You ever draw just a total blank? Anyway, okay, so
it shows that you're a normal human being.
Yeah,
you're
like
and the rest of us mortals.
And it's about time I showed that, isn't it?
Once a year, right?
Yeah, once a year. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I always appreciate it. Okay, so you're not happy about this. I'm not happy about this. Talk about what you think the court did and why.
Well, I think the court made a mistake and once again expanded the power of the federal government at the expense of the states and the people. And essentially what they're saying is that a federal form that states have to use as required by law for people who want to register to vote, that form only requires people to sign a statement under oath that they are a citizen. And Arizona said, well, that's not good enough. If you want to register to vote in our state, you can use that form, but we want some additional material to show that you're a citizen, such as a driver's license or some other reasonable piece of documentation. And the Supreme Court said no. This is not only sufficient, you can't go beyond it. And Justice Alito and Justice Thomas obviously disagreed and suggested and pointed out the Supreme Court, where the U.S. Constitution gives states prerogatives to run elections, and this interferes with those prerogatives in a way that's unconstitutional. So that's the debate, and I think many of your listeners are going to be surprised that the Supreme Court, they don't think that necessarily, at least with respect to this federal form, that states have the ability to ask for something other than just a mere oath that someone is a citizen. And, it's a real problem when you have as many aliens running around our country, and many are lawfully here, tens of millions potentially aren't, and we have to have a way of making sure that only citizens are voting and registering to vote. And this decision yesterday, whether or not it was correct, it certainly made it harder to do so.
Well, absolutely right. It makes it harder to do so, and the left tells us there are no voter fraud problems, and of course studies have shown otherwise. And we've had examples of every Disney character's name being allowed to vote, and also dead people and people registered in different states and voting twice. And I think someone went to Eric Holder's voting place and signed in as Eric Holder, and they let him vote. Of course, he didn't. But so how do we combat? How do we maintain the integrity of our election and the process? I mean, I hear people pushing all the time for, hey, let people vote on the internet. I'm like, are you crazy?
Well, that's what the left wants to do. If the left had their druthers, everyone who was here in the United States would be almost automatically registered to vote, and you can imagine the fraud that would lead to. In the case of making sure that only citizens are registered to vote, the states can have forms separate from the federal form that they can request information, perhaps, and then after the registrations take place, they can run the list against citizen registries and things like that in order to make sure that only citizens are on the rolls. And Justice Scalia, who wrote the majority opinion, said, well, of course, Arizona can ask the federal government for clearance to add this material on.
Good luck with this federal government, right?
Well, the agency that you would ask actually has no one running it, since President Obama and Republicans are in a logjam over who should be running it. So it's not the end of the world in the sense that in some ways the majority opinion affirmed the rights of states to run elections as they see fit. But in the end, it was an assault on federalism, however incremental, and it's more of the same. And in both cases, with Obamacare and now with this case, you have judges misconstruing a law in a way that benefits the expanded power of the federal government at the expense of the states and the people.
Now, does this have any great effect on on the overall fight by states to have voter ID. I mean, this doesn't nullify laws that have already been deemed to be constitutional by lower courts, does it?
No, and the Supreme Court has upheld voter ID laws as well, so I don't think this is going to impact that at all. And it reemphasizes the need for voter ID. And certainly an illegal alien who may by accident register to vote probably won't have a valid ID if they go to vote, and only a voter ID law is going to kind of separate the eligible from the ineligible, perhaps at the voting place once the registrations take place. And we've been pushing hard on voter ID, and also we got to make sure the rolls are clean. Steve, in many of the big states across the country, as much as 20% of the rolls are dirty, meaning they have dead people on the rolls, people who are registered in more than one place to vote, people who've moved away and aren't there anymore at all, people who are completely inactive and don't vote at all, so they basically are off the rolls, practically speaking, and then aliens, both legal and otherwise, who are given all sorts of opportunities to register to vote, and some of them may incorrectly register to vote by malice, meaning they know they're violating the law. But my guess is a lot accidentally register to vote, thinking this is a great country, I'm here either legally or illegally, and they're still letting me vote. And heck, I will do that.
Right. Either way, we got
a way to make sure those lists are clean.
All right, Tom. As always, we appreciate talking to you. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Tom Fitton, President.